Okay, so I'm glad everybody had the time today from burning the chametz and preparing for Seder, whatever you're doing today to get ready for Shabbos and Passover. Uh, I'm glad that we can all be together. And Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we're on, actually, I'm going to mute all. And feel free to unmute at any time with a question or a comment. We're starting chapter 5 of Samuel, page 26 in our editions. Tell you, I got new glasses the other day, just a new prescription, and it's taken me a while. I have progressives. I've had them for years, and it's just, for some reason, this pair has taken me a while to get used to. So that's why if you see me go back and forth like this, I'm not davening. It's just I'm getting the right angle with my glasses to be able to read. So we left off chapter 4 with the Ark of the Covenant being captured by the Philistines, and that Eli's two sons being killed in battle with the Philistines, and one of the daughters-in-law, so Eli has Hophni and Pinchas. So Pinchas's wife is the one who expresses sorrow over the ark being captured. And it's curious that she doesn't express sorrow over her husband being killed. So that could be a comment about the corruption and how corrupt and evil Hophni and Pinchas were, right? Because we remember that they conspired with anybody and everybody who brought sacrifices to Shiloh, that they ate them all, or they took it as property. So that's the reason that they were going to die. Okay, so that's where we left off. So now chapter 5. Uflishtim lakhu et Aron haElohim vayeviuhu me even haezer Ashdoda. The Philistines took the ark of God and they brought it, they brought it from Even Haezer to Ashdod. Now, Ashdod is still a city. It is a city in Israel today. It's one of the main cargo ports of Israel, and it's just north of Ashkelon, which is another Philistine city too. So it's just, so I'm just pointing that out, that Ashdod, an ancient city, that is also a modern city. 2. Vayikhu plishtim et Aron haElohim vayaviu oto Beit Dagon vayatzigu oto Eitzel Dagon. So the Philistines took the ark of God and they brought it to the house of Dagon. So that's their god. Dagon is a Philistine god. So they brought the ark into the house of Dagon, or the temple of Dagon, and they set it alongside Dagon, or the statue or the idol of Dagon. 3. Vayashkimu Ashdodim mimocharat vehine Dagon nofel lefanav artsa lifnei Aron Adonai vayikhu et Dagon vayashivu oto limakomo. All right, so I've read the book of Samuel before. I didn't read this ahead of time, and I don't remember this part. But so the Ashdodites got up early the next day, and they found Dagon fallen on the ground in front of the ark of God. And they took Dagon and they put it back in its place. So if you picture this, I don't know, you picture the Michelangelo's David statue, and picture the Ark of God next to the David statue, and then in the morning you find the David statue on the ground in front of the Ark. Okay, how did it get there? And that's a pretty big statue. So somebody must have moved it. Clearly, from our story, it's like God has some power over Dagon, and Dagon just falls to the ground. Okay, so let's go on. 4, Vayashkimu vaboker mimocharat, vehine Dagon nofel lefanav arza lifnei Aron Adonai, verosh Dagon, ushte kapot yadav krutot el hamiftan, rak Dagon nishar alav. So they got up the next morning, and Dagon is fallen in front of it on the ground, in front of the Ark of God again. And this time, the head of Dagon and his 2 hands, it says the palms of his hands. I think it's 2 hands, because yad in the Bible can be hand, but it could be the whole arm. So if it says kapot yadav, it probably just means the hand and not the arm. So it kind of became a Venus de Milo, but also without a head on it. Okay, so the head and 2 hands were cut off and lay on the threshold. Only Dagon was left to him. So what is that? The torso was there, but the head and the 2 hands are on the threshold. We don't know.
Legs.
Go ahead.
Legs.
What's that?
Legs must be.
Legs there too, yes. Torso and legs, yes. And the rest of the arms too, without the hands. 5. Al kain lo yidrechu chohanei Dagon v'chol habaim beit Dagon al miftan Dagon ba'ashdod ad hayom hazeh. Therefore, the priests of Dagon did not walk there, and all those who came to the house of Dagon, so the priests of Dagon and all others who came to the house of Dagon did not walk on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod until this day. So, in other words, according to this, because of how Dagon fell like this, and I guess what's understood is that it must be some supernatural force or the Ark of God that caused, like everyone understood, that it was the Ark of God that caused Dagon to fall. So nobody walked into the Ark, into the house of Dagon in Ashdod ever again. Okay, fascinating story, but we'll stop here for a moment and look at the commentary here. So I got to do something about these glasses, because anyway, so I'm going to do this without my glasses, excuse me. So bottom of 27, Ashdod, one of the 5 Philistine cities situated near the coast south of Jaffa. Okay, yeah, it's a bit south of Jaffa. Okay, there's a train now. You can take a train from Ashkelon, well, actually from Beersheba to Tel Aviv, and it goes there on the coast. Dagon, the national god of the Philistines. The name may be derived from Dag, fish, or from Dagon, corn. Now, the only problem with that is that we're using a Hebrew word to try to understand the name of a Philistine god. So we don't know if it's a Philistine name for God, like is it a Philistine word, or is it the Hebrew translation of the Philistine name of God? Okay, so translating it fish or corn is using the Hebrew word, like in the Torah, there is dagon as one of these crops that the book of Deuteronomy talks about. I think it's in the book of Deuteronomy. But dag also is a Hebrew word for fish. So again, I don't know. Yes, Bess.
Is there any archaeological evidence of the name of the Philistine?
That's a good question. I don't know. There is Philistine archaeological evidence, but I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, Ron.
They're called Ugaritic texts.
Ugaritic texts.
Y-
Yeah.
Yeah, and they list a couple of dozen, 3 dozen Philistine gods. Dagon listed as the god of fertility and
Okay.
crops,
Okay.
and also the father of their thunder god, Baal Hadad.
Okay. There you go. So, yes. Very good. So, okay. So then that begs the question. So the word dog, is it originally an Ugaritic word that comes into the Hebrew language? So again, I'm not up on all of the etymology.
Who else besides the Philistines used Ugaritic language?
Well, I don't think the Philistines used Ugaritic language. Ugaritic texts, like historical texts or archive material, referred to peoples around at the time. So Philistines would not have spoken Ugaritic if they're coming from Crete, if that's the accepted scholarly opinion as to where the Philistines originated. So that's a different language base. Ugaritic is Middle Eastern, and it's one of the precursor. It's a Semitic language that led, like Ugaritic and Akkadian and Phoenician are languages that existed before Hebrew and before Arabic and before Aramaic. So all those languages, Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, stem from these ancient Semitic languages. But Philistine, again, is now, because they moved to Israel from Crete, their language could have adopted those words. But again, I'm not up on that stuff. Okay, so the commentary goes on. It's a fish god represented by a figure with the head and hands of a man and the body of a fish, kind of like a mermaid, was worshipped in Syria and is depicted on an Assyrian bas relief. Jewish tradition has accepted this interpretation of the name. On the other hand, it would have been fitting if the Philistines, inhabiting the rich cornfields of the Shephelah, that's the coastal plain, had worshipped the corn god. A temple to Dagon existed in Ashdod until the time of the Maccabees. So the Philistines, I really don't know the full history there of Philistine, like were the Philistines still around when the Babylonians conquered Israel and destroyed the first temple? I don't know. But if 1 Maccabees, right, this is, again, the book of the Maccabees is from the time of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is 165 BCE when the Greeks are there. All right, so you have the Babylonians, then you have the Persians in the land of Israel, then you have the Greeks. And the Greeks are there, like the time of Alexander the Great, from the 300s till the 60s, when the Romans come and drive out the Greeks. So the question is, are the Philistines still there? And if not, maybe they're just their architecture, their buildings are still there. So I don't know if Philistines are still using that temple to Dagon in Ashdod that the book of Maccabees refers to, or it's just, a historical site. This is where the Philistines used to be. Okay. 3 in the commentary, fallen upon his face in an attitude of obeisance. Set him in his place again. They had not grasped the significance of their idol's fall. Had palms, those parts of the fish god which had human shape. Upon the threshold, probably the threshold of an inner chamber or recess in which Dagon stood. Trunk of Dagon, the word trunk, so that is, the word trunk is not in the Hebrew text and is supplied from the Targum, the Aramaic translation, and other ancient versions. Kimchi, a medieval commentator, who describes Dagon as half fish and half man, explains the Hebrew as only Dagon, that is, the fish part, was left of him. Okay, we'll see what Alter says about that. To him, possibly by it, that is, by the ark, the head and palms having rolled to the threshold. 5, the practice of jumping over the threshold and not stepping upon it was widely practiced in ancient times. So that's what it says there in verse 5, that they didn't walk on the threshold of the temple in Dagon until today. All right, so let's take a look at Alter on this, beginning on page 263 in Alter. The ark narrative at this point leaves behind the house of Eli, Samuel, and the paramount question of Israel's leadership in order to tell a bizarre satiric story of a battle between cult objects. The potent Ark of the Covenant, which is conceived as the conduit for the cosmic power of the God of Israel, and the idol of Dagon, vainly believed to be a real deity by the Philistines. The dominant tone of the story is a kind of monotheistic triumphalism. Accordingly, themes from the story of the plagues of Egypt are replayed, though in a virtually scatological key. Okay, from Even Ezer to Ashdod. The ark is carried down from Even Ezer in the western part of the territory of Ephraim, roughly 10 miles from the coast, and just a little to the north of present-day Tel Aviv, to Ashdod on the Mediterranean in the heart of Philistine territory. Dagon, this god, is now generally thought to be a vegetation or fertility god, its name cognate with the Hebrew Dagon, grain, and not, as was once widely imagined, with the Hebrew dag, fish. Okay, so between the time that the text that I'm reading from, that we're all reading from, and that commentary was written, I guess, about 40, 50 years ago, and the time that Alter was written, about 15 years ago, the scholarship has developed to the point where that what Alter is saying, forget the fish reference, that's not right. It should be the wheat or corn reference. Set it up alongside Dagon, either to amplify the power of their own deity or to express the subservience of the God of Israel to Dagon. 3, and look, Dagon was fallen forward to the ground. This clause and the parallel one in the next verse reflect the visual perspective of the Ashdodites when they come into the temple early in the morning and make their shocking discovery. Tyndale's translation gets into the spirit of the scene, though with a certain creative license, by rendering this lay groveling upon the ground. On 264, his trunk alone remained on him. The Masoretic text has cryptically, Dagon alone remained on him, but several of the ancient translations appear to have used a version which read Gevo, his trunk, instead of Dagon. The Dagon's first downfall might be attributed to a natural, accidental cause, the idol's somehow slipping from its pedestal. This second incident, in which the hands and head of the idol have been chopped off, offers to the Philistines clear proof of divine intervention. Hacking the hands and feet off war prisoners was a well-known barbaric practice in the ancient Near East, and similar acts of mutilation are attested in the book of Judges. Therefore, this is the introductory formula for etiological explanations, that is, how things came to be. An observed Philistine practice of skipping over the sanctuary threshold as a special measure for entering sacred space is reinterpreted as a reminiscence of the victory of Israel's God over Dagon. Okay, so let's read the rest of the chapter. Verse 6, Vatichbad yad Adonai el ha'ashdodim, vayeh shimeim, vayach otam ba-folim, et Ashdod ve'et givuleha. So the hand of God was heavy on the Ashdodites, and God destroyed them and smote them with hemorrhoids, Ashdod and its environs. Now we'll get to this word ba'afolim in a moment, and we'll see. Alter translates the word as tumors. Okay, so we'll see what the commentary says. We'll see what Alter says in a little bit. 7, Vayiru anshe Ashdod ki chen ve'amru lo yeshev Aron Elohei Yisrael imanu ki kashta yado aleinu ve'al Dagon Eloheinu. Now it would be funny if afilim are really hemorrhoids to translate this as follows in verse 7. The people of Ashdod saw this, that is what happened, and they said, the ark of the God of Israel should not sit with us. So if it's hemorrhoids, the ark of God should not sit with us, right? Okay, you get it. Because his hand, that is God's hand, was hard on us, that it dealt harshly with us, and on Dagon, our God. 8, Vayishlechu. Yes, Bess?
Did God smite all the Ashdod inhabitants?
The Ashdodites and the surrounding area.
Okay. And is this the scatological reference that was made before?
I guess so.
Okay. I was wondering when it was going to happen.
Yeah. 8. Vayishlechu, vayasvu et kol sarnei flishtim aleihem, vayomru, ma na'aseh la'aron Elohei Yisrael. Vayomru, gat yisov Aron Elohei Yisrael, vayasebu et Aron Elohei Yisrael. So they sent for and gathered all the Philistine lords to them, that is to Ashdod, and they said, what should we do to the ark of the God of Israel? And they said that the people of Gat, I understand it from the Hebrew that the people of Gat should surround, Gat should surround the ark of the God of Israel, and they surrounded the ark of the God of Israel. So it says here in this English translation, let the ark of the God of Israel be carried about unto Gat, and they carried the ark of God of Israel about thither. So, or, wait, so the altar translates it to Got, let the ark of the God of Israel be brought round. So the way I was understanding it, the people of God should surround it is not the way to surround it, is not the way to translate it, but rather the ark of God should go to Got and go around in Got. Yes, Dov.
Is Gath a Philistine city, or
Yes, yes. What is so in Israel today? There's Kiryat Gat, and that's built next to the ancient city of Gat, and that's one of the 5 Philistine cities. It's Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gat, and Gaza, and I don't know the 5th one offhand. Okay, and they're all, it's not that far. Kiryat Gat is not, it's inland, it's not on the coast, but it's not that far from the other cities.
so why would they move it from one Philistine city to another?
Well, I don't know. They don't want to give it back, but they thought, okay, well, Ashdod is maybe. Well, let's see what happens if God's afflicted also. 9. Vayehi acharei hesabu oto, vatehi yad Adonai ba'ir mehuma gedola ma'od, vayach et anshei ha'ir mikaton va'ad gadol, vayisatru lahem afolim. So, okay, so that was a bad idea to bring it to God, because it says after they circled it, or they had it circle Got, that the hand of God was brought down heavily on that city and struck the city from the inhabitants of the city, from young to old, and hemorrhoids broke out on them too. 10. Vayeshalchu et Aron ha'Elohim Ekron. That's the 5th city, I guess. Ekron. Vayehi kivo Aron ha'Elohim Ekron. Vayizaku ha'Ekronim lemor. Hesabu elai et Aron Elohei Yisrael lahamiteni et ami. So then they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And as the ark of God came to Ekron, the Ekronites cried out, saying, the ark has come to circle us, the ark of God of Israel, to kill us and our people and my people. 11. Vayishlachu, vayasfu et kol sarnei Flishtim, vayamru, shalchu et Aron Elohei Yisrael, v'yashov li mekomo, v'lo yamit oti ve'et ami, ki hayata mehumat mavet bechol ha'ir, Kavda ma'od yad ha'Elohim sham. So they sent for and gathered the Philistine lords, and they said, send back the ark of the God of Israel to return it to its place, and so that it won't kill me and my people, because there was a tremendous amount of death in every city, and the hand of God was heavy there. Right. So in other words, the lords of the Philistines said, no, we can't keep this ark. It's because of the ark that we've had so much destruction and affliction. We send it back. 12. Ve'ha'anashim asher lo metu huku ba'afilim v'ta'al shavat ha'ir ha'shamayim. And the men who did not die were afflicted with hemorrhoids, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. Okay, so let's read the commentary here, back on the bottom of 26. But better, and the people were punished as well as their God destroyed them. We may infer from verse 5 that this is an allusion to a plague of mice which ravaged the land. But see also the note there. Well, we haven't gotten to chapter 6, verse 5 yet, but because there's achbarim that happened. So, yeah, so trying to figure out what these Aphilim are, but we'll see. Alter has an extensive commentary on it, so we'll see that momentarily. So now the translation is emerods, that is hemorrhoids. So the Hebrew word in the Ketiv, how it's written in the manuscript, literally swellings, was understood when the how we're supposed to read it was substituted for it. So in other words, we're supposed to read techarim. That's what the asterisk on verse 6. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth line on page 28 in the Hebrew, the first word of the line, bet ayin fe lamed yud mem. So above the fe is an asterisk. The asterisk refers down below the Hebrew in the small print, ba techarim. Okay, so the original Ketiv may have meant tumors or boils, and it's suggested by some authorities that the affliction was the bubonic plague, of which boils are a characteristic symptom. Lords, so we're not sure. What is it? Aphilim? Is it techarim? Lords of the Philistines, a special word is used, seren, evidently their native title. And I think we saw that word back in the book of Judges with the story of Samson. Gat, one of the chief cities of the Philistines, its site cannot be identified. The modern Tel Es Safi, about 16 miles east of Ashdod, has been suggested. Now, I thought it was the Israeli town of Kiryat Gat would be associated with it, but I don't know. Discomfiture, that is panic. Bottom of 29, the Ekron, the most northerly of the Philistine cities. To us, to slay us and our people, literally to me, to slay me and my people. So again in the next verse, either the Lord speaks in the name of his people, or the pronouns represent the speech of each individual man. The cry of the city, the Hebrew word denotes a cry for help. Okay, so let's look at Alter on this. All right, so we're on the bottom of 264. The hand of the Lord was heavy upon the Ashdodites. The word kaved, previously associated with Eli's corpulence and linked by root with kavod, glory, recurs here in a clause that introduces the first of several echoes of the plagues against Egypt. Tumors, many translations render this as hemorrhoids, and there is a little confusion in the Masoretic text. The consonantal written version has tumors, but the tradition for reciting the text indicates hemorrhoids. This confusion is compounded because the Septuagint, the Greek translation, seconded by Josephus, includes a plague of mice, not in evidence in the Masoretic version. And the golden mice of the next chapter look very much like a response to just such a plague. The fact, moreover, that hemorrhoids are a humiliating but not lethal disorder and are not spread by epidemic, whereas the Philistines protest that they are dying, gives support to interpretation at least as old as Rashi. The plague in question is bubonic plague, carried by rats, metamorphosed in this story into mice, and associated with the epidemic, but perhaps not clearly understood as the bearers of the disease. The tumors are the buboes of bubonic plague, which might especially afflict the lower body, including the rectal area. Okay. Overlords, bottom of 265. The Hebrew term Siranim is a Philistine loanword and is applied only to Philistines as a touch of local color, like calling Spanish aristocrats grandees. Some scholars have linked the word with the Greek tyrannos. Since there is only one seren for each Philistine city, they are clearly more than just lords. Gat, The ark is carried around to 3 of the 5 Philistine cities. The other 2 are Gaza and Ashkelon. The hand of the Lord was against the town, a great panic. This apposition reflects the Hebrew syntax, which sounds a little peculiar, but there is not convincing evidence of a defective text here. They had tumors in their secret parts. The verb yisatru is peculiar. This translation follows Rashi, Kimchi, and the King James Version in linking it with seter, secret place. The town's outcry rose to the heavens. This clause balances on the edge of an ambiguity. The heavens can be simply the sky or the abode of God. Is God, who has been present in the story through his acts, his heavy hand, but not, as it were, in person, listening to the anguished cries of the Philistines? Or is this merely an image of the shrieks of the afflicted Philistines echoing under the silent vault of the heavens? Okay, so let's, it's 10:05. We can read on, see what happens to the ark. So now we're starting chapter 6 on page 29. Vayehi Aron Adonai bistei Flishtim shiv'a chodashim. And so the ark of God was in the Philistine fields, or it says here the country of the Philistines, 7 months. So I guess I would say it's not inside a city because they're afraid of how the ark might impact the population. So it's in Philistine territory in somewhere for 7 months. Vayikre'u Flishtim la kohanim vela kosmim lemor. Ma na'aseh la'aron Adonai. Hodi'unu b'ameh neshalchenu limakomo. And the Philistines called for the priests and so it says here the diviners, it could be the magicians, saying, what should we do to the ark of God? Let us know how we should send it back to its place. 3, Vayomru im meshalchim et Aron Elohei Yisrael, al teshalchu oto rekam, ki hashev tashivu lo asham, az terafu venoda lachem, lama lo tasur yado mikem. And they said, that is the Kohanim and the diviners said, if you send the ark of the God of Israel, don't send it empty. Rather return it, return him a guilt offering. Then you shall be healed, and it should be known to you why his hand is not removed from you. In other words, the Kohanim are saying, you gotta have some kind of guilt offering to try to be healed from these hemorrhoids or these tumors or whatever it is, if you're going to return the ark. 4, Vayomru ma ha'asham asher nashiv lo. Vayomru mispar sarnei Flishtim Chamisha efolei zahav, v'chamisha achberei zahav, ki magefa achat lechulam ulesarnechem. So they said, what is this guilt offering that we should return to him? And a number of the lords of the Philistines said, 5 golden hemorrhoids and 5 golden mice. According to the number of the lords of the Philistines, for 1 plague was on you all and on your lords. So 5 cities, 5 lords, 5 golden mice, 5 golden hemorrhoids. Okay? 5 So, in other words, we haven't seen anything about mice in chapter 5. But here it's understood that mice was somehow part of the plague. And that's what Alter was getting at, that maybe it was the bubonic plague because of the mice represented here.
Two things.
Yeah,
I thought only 3 cities were afflicted.
right. But it was, yes, but there are 5 cities altogether. So I don't know, maybe they didn't want to take a chance with the other 2. Okay, 5. Va'asitem tsalmei efolechem v'tsalmei achberechem hamashchitim et haaretz unetatem leElohei Yisrael kavod. Ulai yakel et yado me'alechem ume'al Elohechem ume'al artsechem. And you should make the images of the hemorrhoids and the images of the mice that destroy the land, and you shall give glory to the God of Israel. Maybe God will lighten his hand from on you. Right before, his hand was heavy with bringing the plague. Now, maybe by offering this, God will lighten God's hand from you and from your gods and from your land. 6, page 31. Velama techabdu et levavechem ka'asher kibdu Mitzrayim ufaro et libam halo ka'asher hit alel bahem vayeshalchum vayelechu. So why should your hearts be hardened or heavy? Right. This is another allusion to the Egyptian story in which Pharaoh's heart was hardened, right, refusing to let the people go. And refusing to give in to the plagues. So why should your hearts be hardened? Just like the Egyptians and Pharaoh's hearts were hardened when God had wrought on them, that is, the plagues, wrought the plagues on them, and they did not let them. And they let them, well, it says in the negative. So, when he had wrought among them, did they not let the people go and they departed? Yes. So, right. So remember that the hardening there required a lot of work on God's part to get them to, a lot of plagues, to get them to send them out to go. So,
Rabbi?
Yes, Dov.
What kind of time period are we looking at from when the Egyptians were destroyed in the Red Sea, went through the plagues, and up to this point that this story might have survived?
It's about 200 years, or a little bit more, 200, 250 years, something like that. You figured the story of the Exodus, we really don't know, but maybe it kind of related. I think there's some archaeological evidence about the destruction of the city of Jericho, and that I think was around 1300 BCE, something like that. And then King David is about 1000 BCE. So at most it's about 300 years or so from the Exodus from Egypt to this time.
So it's interesting that this story has survived through the region.
Well, okay. So Dov, that's assuming that this biblical account is true.
Right.
Okay. So we're assuming that we have to assume that, no, we don't have to assume. The Bible assumes, in telling the story in this way, that the Philistines are aware of the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, and they're settling in the land of Israel. but we don't know for sure because this is the biblical account of that story. We don't know the Philistine account of the story, right? And so, in other words, that the Torah provides us an account of the Exodus from Egypt, but there's no corroborating evidence from Egyptian material from the same time that there were a people of Israel and that 600,000 people were dramatically let go. Okay, so, right? So that just begs, I'm not denying that the Torah is not true. I'm just saying that we don't know for sure what we're reading here now in Samuel is a historically accurate portrayal. Okay? So the Bible wants us to believe that what we just finished reading about in the Torah and the book of Joshua and Judges, that all of that really happened. And that the Philistines who were living there at the time kind of knew about all this stuff. It didn't really impact them so much. But now the Philistines, since we're having an issue with them, with the Ark of the Covenant, and there's going to be battles with them off and on throughout the book of Samuel, then we have their perspective, but we don't know if it's their perspective. It's the Bible's opinion of their perspective. Okay. So, yeah. So we just have to keep that in mind, right? So the Bible wants us to think that God is great and is more powerful than other gods. And this is the story that is being presented to show, look at the power of God. They brought hemorrhoids and mice, maybe the bubonic plague, on the Philistines. But we don't know. We don't know. Okay. 7. Ve'ata kechu va'asu agala chadasha echat ushte farot alot asher lo ala alehem ol, va'asartem et haparot ba'agala, v'hashevotem b'neihem me'achareihem habayata. So now go and take and make a cart, a new cart, one new cart, and two. It says here 2 milk kine. So 2 cows, that 2 cows that have not been worked, that no yoke has been placed upon them, and tie the cows to the cart, and bring their calves home from them. 8. Ulekachtem et Aron Adonai, unetatem oto el ha'agala, v'et klei hazahav asher hashevotem lo asham, tasimu ba'argaz mitzido, v'shilachtem oto v'halach. So take the Ark of God and put it on the cart, and the golden vessels that you have returned to them as a guilt offering, put in a trunk. Argaz is a modern Hebrew word, but it's translated here as a coffer, but it's some kind of trunk on the side of it. So the golden things go in this trunk that will be on the cart next to the ark, and send it away that it might go. And verse 9, Uri'item im derech gevulo ya'ale beit shemesh hu asalanu et hara'a hagadola hazot, ve'im lo, v'yadanu ki lo yado nag'abanu mikrehu hayalanu. So
there's no driver.
Right. So see if it goes by way of the border to Beit Shemesh. Then God has done this evil to us, And if the cart doesn't go that way, then we would know that has nothing to do with God who has afflicted us. It was just a coincidence that happened to us, that by chance. So in other words, these cows are going to start walking. So if God is really in charge, God's going to cause the cows to go back to Israel. And if the cows don't walk that way, then we know that has nothing to do with God. Okay, that's what these lords and Kohanim and diviners are saying. And let's look at the commentary on this, beginning on the bottom of 29.
They made it like a test.
Yes,
They
that's
took
right.
cows that never had a yoke before, and the cows had to leave their babies.
Right, that's right. Where are these cows going to go?
They don't know Beth Shemesh, but
Beit Shemesh is Beit Shemesh. Okay, if you look at a map and you wanted to go from Jerusalem to Kiryat Gat, you'd go by way of Beit Shemesh. So it's diagonal southwest of Jerusalem. Okay, so Beit Shemesh, is northeast of Kiryat Gat. So, diviners, men who claim to predict the future or to interpret the will of God by observing omens. The Philistines seem to have been particularly addicted to the resort to them. So see Isaiah 2, replenished with soothsayers like the Philistines. 30, wherewith they understood that some propitiatory gift was demanded. In any wise, that is, at all events, a guilt offering in compensation for the wrong done in removing the ark. It shall be known to you, the sense is your being healed will convince you that it is the presence of the ark in your midst which is the cause of your suffering. They were still not certain that their misfortune was more than a coincidence. Mice, see verse 5 and the note on verse 6. Another explanation of the mice is quoted by Kennedy. The introduction of the mice that destroy or spread destruction through the country, not that destroy the crops, is to be explained by the well-established fact that rats and similar house vermin are at once the earliest victims and the most dangerous propagators of the bubonic plague. Give glory. By sending gifts in the form of their physical afflictions, they would acknowledge that it was the God of Israel who had afflicted them and would thus give glory to him. You, your gods, your land, all had suffered misfortune of one kind or another. Wrought, that is, wrought his will among them. In chapter 31, the same verb, hit halel, is rendered make a mock of, and the RV margin and many scholars recommend a like rendering in this context. New cart, the use of a new cart, an unyoked kine, was a mark of reverence for the ark. It may also have been that the use of untrained kine was part of the test. Bring their calves home if, in spite of their natural inclination to remain with their young and without being driven, they draw the cart on the way to the land of Israel, there will be in this a sure sign that it is God's will that the ark be returned. Jewels of gold, which I translated as gold vessels, literally articles or vessels of gold, namely the mice of gold and the images of their emerods. Goeth up from the Shephelah, the coastal plain, to the hill country of the Israelites. Beit Shemesh, a priestly city on the borders of the territory of Judah, and probably the nearest Israelite town to Ekron. Okay, so let's look at altar on this, and then we'll call it a day. This chapter, the episode actually ends in the first verse of chapter 7, which concludes the ark narrative, also brings to a climax the traits that set it off from the larger narrative of Samuel, Saul, and David, in which it is placed. Instead of the sharply etched individual characters of the surrounding narrative, we have only collective speakers and agents. Instead of the political perspective with its human system of causation, the perspective is theological, and the culminating events of the story are frankly miraculous. God, who does not speak in this narrative, manifests his power over the Philistines and Israelites alike through supernatural acts in the material realm, as the strange tale of the cart and the golden images vividly demonstrates. Send it back. The Hebrew mishalchim is the same verb repeatedly used for Pharaoh sending Israel out of Egypt, and thus sustains the network of allusions to the Exodus story. In Exodus, the Israelites too were told that they would not leave Egypt empty-handed, but would take with them golden ornaments despoiled from the Egyptians. There will be atonement for you. The Masoretic text has, it will become known to you, but the reading of both the Qumran Samuel scroll and the Septuagint, and it will be atoned for you, makes far better sense. You shall give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand. Once again, the writer harks back to the play of antonyms, kavod, kaved, glory, heavy, and kal, light, and in other contexts, worthless. Glory has been exiled from Israel with the capture of the ark. Now, with the restitution of the ark, together with an indemnity payment of golden images, glory will be restored. This process helps explain the insistence on the term give back associated with the guilt offering. Harden your hearts. This phrase is not only an explicit link with the Exodus story, but it also continues the play on glory, heaviness, because the literal Hebrew idiom is make your heart heavy. Let the Hebrews go. The Hebrew says let them go, but the lack of antecedent for the pronoun would be confusing in English. One new cart. It is to be an undefiled instrument made specifically for this ritual purpose. That no yoke has touched. The cows too are uncompromised by use in ordinary labor, though the more important point is that they are entirely devoid of experience as draft animals, so that their ability to pull the cart straight to Beit Shemesh would have to be a manifestation of God's intervention or of the intrinsic power of the ark. Their calves back inside. This, of course, is the crux of the test. The milking cows will have to go against nature and plodding forward into Israelite territory with their calves behind them, shut up in the manger and waiting to be fed. And one more, on 268, chest, the Hebrew argaz, appears only here. Post-biblical Hebrew consistently understood it as chest, though some scholars, on the basis of Semitic cognates, have argued for the meaning of pouch. It may be more plausible that precious objects would be placed in orderly fashion in a chest rather than piled up in a pouch. Okay, this is why I said in modern Hebrew, an argaz is a trunk. Okay, very good. So we'll stop here for today. Wishes for a Shabbat Shalom and a happy and healthy Passover. Safe travels if you're going anywhere. Enjoy the Passover holiday, and we will have class next Friday. It might start a little bit late because we're going to have minyan next Friday at 8:30. Paul Tillis has yahrzeit for his first wife Andrea, so we'll have a minyan at 8:30, and it might go a little bit longer than 9:30. So. Anyway, I'll send that as a reminder in the email with the recording of this class. Take care, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.